of business around critical skills, sales, customer service, leadership, those sorts of things. And today we are going to be talking about time management, or as I say, you can't manage time, which we'll get into, and off we go. So this is what our agenda is basically going to be. We're going to talk about what it looks like to struggle with time management. Then we're going to talk about the 3 Ps of time management, and then the plan. So this is participatory. There is a point in time way later where you will be able to ask questions, but just know you can ask them throughout. I'm going to be asking you to answer some questions so I have a better idea of really what time management issues you feel like you are dealing with. Okay. And we're going to start right there. So in the chat, if you would please just put when you think about time management or challenges that you have with managing time, what does that look like? Like, what kinds of obstacles do you bump up against? What kinds of situations? So that I can get an idea of what that actually looks like. Okay, cool. Here we go. Priorities. Okay, poor planning. Oh, managing creativity. The paper clutter. Oh, yeah. They mate overnight. Organization, prioritizing tasks. Great, great, great. What else have we got? Clutter, focusing. Struggling to do the strategic rather than the busy. Yeah. Managing a large variety of work. Other people's interruptions. Yeah. Procrastination, ADHD. I have a feeling that all of us as small business owners experience that in some way. Multiple demands, multiple projects. Great. This is great. Other people's interruptions. Absolutely. You bet. Organizing tasks. Yeah. Okay. This is good. Balance between working in your business and on your business. Certainly. Emails. Huge. Confusion on where to start first. Over multitasking. Okay. Very good. All right. These are great. I appreciate it. Not unusual. This is what most people deal with. And you can see on the screen that we have 2 different jars that have the same sorts of things in them. And you may have seen this sort of exhibit before, but what it comes down to is where are we spending our time? So the rocks, sand, pebbles. We have our big things to do. We have medium size. We have the minutia, I will say, all those little things. And depending on how we prioritize the things that we do determines how much we can get done. So you can see on the left, when you focus on all the little things, you don't have a lot of room for the bigger things. And so many of us feel like we're not really accomplishing anything because we're not chipping away at those big endeavors, initiatives, whatever they are. On the flip side, if we schedule and focus on those big things, and I will say break them down, which we'll talk about, we have room for more things because we're putting them first. Okay. Now, for me, the interesting thing is this. This webinar is called You Can't Manage Time, because you can't. We talk about time management, but the truth is time happens. Time happens. It's happening right now. It just happened. It's going to happen later. It's a thing. We have no control over time. Clock's ticking. What we can manage is our decisions. And when we look at it that way, it's a lot more empowering because if you think about it, time management can feel like it is out of our control. Well, time management is because time happens. We can't pause, right? Freeze frame, any of that. It's going to keep going by. But if we start looking at it in terms of managing our decisions, then we can take a whole different perspective on what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, or what I would say is how it's getting done, not necessarily by us. So that's the mindset I would like us to be in as we go through this. Okay, there are what I call the 3 Ps of time management. I'm going to call it decision management moving forward. And they are purpose, people, and process. Okay, now, purpose, dictionary definition, the reason why something exists is done or used. I want you to think about the things that you do in your business and the tasks that you engage in, the functions that you perform. And purpose has 2 parts to it. The first one is, what is the purpose of that activity? So, is it even really necessary? And if so, why am I doing it? So I just want you to take a minute and just think through some of the things that you engage in on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And what is the reason that you are the person doing it? And I'm going to say, even if you're a solopreneur, I'm a solo. I still had to do this exercise. I still had to look at the things that I was doing and ask myself the question, why is it that I am the person who's doing those things? This is critically important because it leads to the next P, but also it gives us the opportunity to really take a look at our business and say, where should I be investing my time? What should I be doing? And the short answer is you should be doing the things that really no one else can do in or for your business. So the flip side of that is you should not be doing the things that there are other people who could do and would probably do better than you. Now, I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs that makes them feel vulnerable, that they don't want to give up their accounting. They don't want to give up balancing their books and paying bills and things like that because it makes them feel vulnerable to have someone else in that mix. Or they don't want someone doing their marketing because it makes them feel vulnerable that they're not going to communicate in the same way that the entrepreneur is. And the reality is that these functions that you may have other people do, or you may need to have other people do, you're right. They aren't necessarily going to do it as well as you or in the same way that you do. That's okay. As long as they are doing it effectively, efficiently, with low to no errors, this is part of how we prioritize these things. Where should I really be spending my time? And can I find someone I can trust? Which, gets into a whole other, how do we find these people? Some are going to be in your business. If you're a solo like me, they're not going to be in your business. They're going to be outside of your business, and that's okay too. And sometimes those are the best people because they have expertise in those areas where you do not. Okay. So I'm curious if any of you would like to share why you are doing some of the things that you are doing in your business. See if I can get any brave people. It doesn't look like I have any yet. I'm gonna give you a quick second. Joseph, I am going to get back to you on that. Thank you for the question. Okay, I don't have anyone putting those things in the chat, so I'm going to move on to people because it is the second P. And this is what we were just talking about, where once we've identify, these are the things that need to get done, but not necessarily by me, then we have to think about, okay, then by who? Because someone's got to do it. We need to figure out who those people are or that person is. And then we move to process. Now, the process, critically important. One of the aspects of the process is move slowly, which may sound a little counterintuitive. And what I mean by that is pick one thing that you feel would free up a significant amount of time and would not be terribly difficult to offload. And just do one thing. What we don't want to do is go, okay, well, here's 5 things that I'm doing that I probably shouldn't be doing. I'm probably not the best person to be doing, so I'm just going to hand off all 5. Don't do them all at once. Get used to the idea. Make sure that it's successful, and we'll go into that when we're talking about the plan in a minute. But this is a great quote, and it is, you don't prioritize what's on your schedule, you schedule your priorities. Okay? So you say to yourself, here are all the things that need to be done in my business that I'm currently doing. Here are the ones that I shouldn't be doing, that someone else should be doing. So let me create a process. Let me figure out who should be doing each of those. And let me create the plan and the process for turning those things over to those people. Then I'm left with the rest of the things, because that's a whole process. And now, how do I prioritize those things? So there's a couple of thoughts on this. The first one is this: when you have something big that you need to accomplish, that can be hard to see how you find the time to get that done. And the key to that is breaking it down into the smallest steps you can. Most initiatives are linear. So something has to happen, which then leads to the next step, which leads to the next step, and so on and so on and so on. So the question comes down to, okay, let me break it down and say, what is the thing I need to do first? What is the thing I need to do right now? What small step do I need to do? And then put it on your calendar, because that's how it's going to get done. When you actually schedule it, it's a priority. You actually schedule it, and you can schedule in small bites on your calendar so that if something comes up, an emergency or something, and you are not able to get to that thing, it's so small you can move it. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we say, I have this big initiative to do and I need to carve out half a day. Okay, best of intentions. But I carve out half a day and then I get a call from a client who needs something. And what I say to myself is, okay, well, that just blew that out of the water. I'm going to go deal with the client and I'll worry about this later. And we never get it back on the calendar. But if I had it broken down into little pieces and I just scheduled the first piece, that's easy for me to move because I can look at that whole landscape and say, okay, I can go deal with this client and that'll take X amount of time or, the whole half day, whatever. So let me move this to tomorrow morning, or let me move this to the afternoon, or whatever it is. So we feel more empowered. We feel more in control because we're not managing time, we're managing our decisions. All right. The next part of it is managing people to help us get these things done. And what I mean by that is some of you said it, other people's interruptions, emails. There are things that invade our day that are other people's priorities, not ours. And yet we let them invade our day. So what we want to do is implement a process so that they are actually working with us on our priority. And this is what I mean by that. If you need a half an hour to get something done, you're in the last phase of it and you've got a deadline and you just need to wrap this thing up, and you know that there are people either in your business or in your world who could potentially interrupt you during that time, you set up a process for saying to them, this is where communication comes in, where you say to them, I could really use your help. I have this project that I'm finishing up and I am in the very end of it. And I've carved out this hour to just focus on that and nothing else. So I'm going to put on my do not disturb and I'm going to put my phone away and I'm going to, sequester myself. And I could really use your help in keeping other people from interrupting me while I'm working on this. I just need this hour. People want to be helpful. And most of the time, they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know that you're working on something really critical unless you tell them that you are. So they don't realize that they're being interruptive. Our job is to tell them what we have going on and how they can help us achieve that, what we could use from them. I would go so far as to say to someone, take my phone and don't give it back to me till I'm done and I come back to you unless there's an emergency. So Sharon and I were talking, before we started here about kids. And I started my business when my kids were really little. They were 6 and 9. And I would say to people, if I went to do an advisory session or a training, and I would say to people, my phone is out because I have small children. And if the school calls or one of them calls, I'm going to take the call because they know not to unless it's an emergency. We're all on the same page. We all know what's happening. We, set the expectation, set the stage. And so that way, if one of my kids called, I would just excuse myself and I would take the call and make sure that it was something critical. At the same time, I had to make sure that anyone who could potentially call me knew with certain people, it better be an emergency. And with other people, I'm not going to answer my phone, leave me a message. We teach people how to treat us. So our job is to say, it's okay for me to block people out for a short period of time. You're not going to do it for the entire day. I mean, you might, chances are good you're not going to, because you're going to break this stuff into little pieces. So all you're saying is, I just need an hour. I just need a half an hour. I just need 45 minutes. I just need to take this 15 minutes and then I'll come back to you. I'll circle back to see you when I'm done. It's communicating these things and not assuming that people know what you're working on, because they don't. And even if they do, they're not keying in about the level of importance unless you tell them. And now let's talk about email and texting. I could throw that in there as well. Ask yourself the question, and you can actually do this exercise. You can monitor your email for an entire day. And what you're looking for is, how many emails did I get? And how many of them required my attention? And how urgent were those that required my attention? Odds are you are going to find that it is a small number of emails that require your immediate urgent attention. We have trained ourselves to think that if we aren't on our email all the time, we're going to miss opportunities, when most of the time that is not true. Some people will email you, and if they don't hear from you like within an hour, they will call you or they will email again. Did you get my email? And what that tells us is they don't necessarily need an answer right now. They just want to make sure that you got it. So there's a process of putting an autoresponder on your email that says, thank you so much for your email, in an effort to meet all my clients' needs and be as efficient as possible. I check my email twice a day, 10:30 and 4. Please know I will be getting back to you within 24 hours. If this is an emergency, please call with a number. Okay, so you're giving them the opportunity to say, this cannot wait. I need something immediately. House is on fire. But the vast majority of people will not. And then you have to close your email and only open it those 2 times. See where I'm going with this? So you are keeping yourself, and turn the notifications off. Turn them off your phone, turn them off your computer. When you remove that notification, that system, you are then able to focus on the things that you need to be focusing on in the minute. And the beautiful part of this is that we get so much more done when we have uninterrupted focus in small bites. So then we can get these things done more readily because we get to be uninterrupted. Every time you're interrupted, or you interrupt yourself with your email, whatever it is, your brain has to reset. So you have to, sit back down and go, okay, now wait, what was I working on? So a lot of times we are creating the obstacle that we are experiencing. So we have 2 different scenarios. We have the process for delegating the things that we should not be doing because it is not our highest use. It is things that there really are other people who would actually be better doing those things. There are certain things in your business, you are the person who has to do them. And there are all sorts of other things that other people could do. And then there's the process for handling interruptions, handling email, handling phone calls, having that process in place so that you can create a bubble when you need that bubble in small bites of time, so that you can be more effective and efficient with your time and knocking things out and getting things done. Are there before I move on, I just want to know if there are any questions. Put them in the chat. Any comments on this whole idea?
So Diane, there were a lot of comments in the chat for your last question on your last exercise before the process. So you can either take those now or we can go back to them at the end of the session.
We could, thank you so much. We can do those. I'm the only one in my business. Was under the understanding that I need to be aware on how my business is running in all areas. Oh my gosh. Okay. June, such a great point. Yes, you do. You are ultimately responsible, but this is when we do trust but verify. You cannot possibly do everything in your business and do it well. So what you do is when you delegate something, part of that delegation is having a process for review and checking in and reporting so that you are not letting someone, take your ship and take it in whatever direction they want. So there's a difference between being aware of what's going on in your business and doing everything in your business. Okay? In order for you to be able to work on your business and have the ability to plan and strategize and grow and all those other things, you have to be able to have that time in that headspace. So you have to give some of these things away. You have to delegate. You can outsource to, people outside of your business. It's figuring out which of those things you're going to do. And then how are you going to have them report back to you? How are you going to check in on them on a regular basis to make sure they are doing the things that you expect them to be doing? Okay. Okay, if you don't currently have a strong enough team to take on of other responsibilities, then this is one of the places where you look outside your business. So you look at virtual assistants, you look at fractional marketing people or companies, fractional CFOs. There's all sorts of fractional HR. There's all sorts of people who have started businesses with expertise in particular areas of business where you don't need someone full-time to be doing that, whatever it is, and they don't want to be working for just one company full-time. So it's more cost effective actually for everybody for them to work with your company 20 hours a month or something. So that's all part of figuring out that process. You can't pay them what they need. That's at some point you have to ask, first of all, there's a lot of organizations that a lot of these companies where it really is cost effective and they can do, as little. And this is why I'm saying start out with something small so that you can start relieving some of this time and energy so that you can be focusing on revenue generating, right? Many of you may be thinking, and I know for me, my revenue generation's up to me. I have to be out building relationships, prospecting, all of those things. That's on me. That is not something that I can necessarily give off to anyone else. So I have to make sure that I have the opportunity to do that consistently because then that's where the cash flow is going to be. Cash flow is, a couple of you have mentioned it, it's an interesting thing. You need to, pay attention to where are you spending money? When are you spending that money? How are you getting paid? Are you getting paid effectively? And that really speaks to sometimes taking a look inside your business and saying, am I paying for something right now that I don't really need right now? So what a lot of small business owners do is they hear about a service or a subscription or a process or whatever, and they're wowed by it, and this is going to help my business and whatever, and so they invest a lot of money on like learning how to do something. And you have to ask yourself the question, should I be investing the money in learning how to do that, or should I be investing the money in having someone who already knows how to do it, do it? Okay. One of the things that we need to be doing in our business is periodically reviewing where our money's going, and is that where it really needs to go? So an example I will give is whatever sort of accounting system you're using. A lot of businesses just go straight to QuickBooks. Okay, do you really need QuickBooks? Or can you use one of the free programs? You know, are you just paying bills and you can do everything else on a spreadsheet for now? I don't know the answer to it, but these are the sorts of questions we need to ask ourselves. Am I paying for subscriptions that I'm never using? Is there a less expensive but equally good alternative out there that I should be shifting to? Am I paying in one block sum, or am I paying monthly? Because one of the best cash flow things you can do is to pay monthly, because it's a smaller amount and you're not letting go of big chunks of dollars. Okay. Okay, being unable to hold people accountable, it's key, right? And we have to learn how to do that, and learn that it is not a negative, it's a positive thing. If I hold you accountable, it's because I believe you are qualified and capable of doing this thing. And so I have an expectation that you will. And by me holding you accountable, I'm helping you ensure that you are accomplishing those things. All right. And accountability comes down to clear communication, setting expectations, and then following through on those expectations, and the consistent follow through, especially at the very beginning of having someone else do something. There needs to be a lot of conversation around, how is it going? Are you running into anything? Is there anything you need? You know, making sure that people have the resources. And part of the reason why I'm sitting on this, the P of process, is because that can really be the linchpin. Like, it can be easy to figure out what you shouldn't be doing, and it can be relatively easy to figure out who should be doing it. It's when it comes down to the process, we want to make sure that we have a process that covers all of those bases, that sets clear expectations and consequences, that sets a clear schedule of how that handoff is going to happen, and how we're going to be communicating throughout the process to make sure that it's happening smoothly, that nothing's falling through any sorts of cracks. Okay. It's like slowing down to speed up. It's taking the time now to get all of that in place effectively so that we can be freed up. And I will tell you, I've taught this a lot, and I've taught it as a multi-day workshop, and I've had people where their assignment was to go back to to pick one thing that they were going to give to someone else and to go back to work and do it, whether it was internally or externally. And they did it. And what they realized was how great it actually was, how easy it happened, how excited the other person was to be given that responsibility, to realize that they didn't need to be hanging on to whatever that thing was, that it was perfectly okay for someone else to be doing it. The only way we know that is by doing it, but having a very clear process for making sure it gets done well. So, okay. The other thing I will say is this: if you can't afford it at this point, I get it. Believe me, I've had periods in my business where I could not. It's something you work toward. So you find out, what would that investment really be? And you work toward being able to make that move, make that decision. Another thing you can do is, if you can find someone who does that thing that you shouldn't be doing, and you can, and you need what they offer, maybe you do a barter, maybe you do a swap of services or products or whatever it is. There's always that opportunity as well. So, oops, sorry, I went ahead when I should have gone behind. Okay. So, I just want to make sure I've got everyone and everything. So this is a kind of example that I want to explore. Okay. And it goes like this. I want to pick the right one. Let's say, okay, I call this Vacation Ralph. So Ralph is taking a week of vacation starting on Monday, starting next Monday. Pretend like today's Tuesday of the previous week. What do you think Ralph needs to do to be sure he's caught up before he goes on vacation? And is it possible for him to have some or all of his work covered while he's gone? And how do you think that would happen? What do you think that would look like? And you can answer in the chat if you would. And while you're doing that, there is a question. Shoot, sorry. There's a question in the Q&A about how do you know when to hire a contractor as opposed to a full-time employee. I would say once you have a contractor doing so much work, I mean, you may never need an employee. Let me say it this way. And you have to consider the expenses that are included with having an employee and the responsibilities that are included with an employee as opposed to a contractor. The flip side of that is that you would need to hire a full-time person if you needed to be directing what they were doing, when they were doing it, and how they were doing it, because you can't do that with a contractor. So some of it comes down to the labor laws around the difference between a contractor and an employee. And if it's a situation where you need to be that involved and it's enough work that it would require full time, you potentially need to hire. So, all right, I got one person. Okay, thanks. Now I'm getting some more. Temp support for specific tasks, absolutely. Determine priority tasks that will need to be completed while Ralph's out. Yep. Delegate them and schedule follow-up. Yeah, exactly. Communicate that who's doing the job, right? Instead of Ralph, right? So that's saying I will be out for the next week in my absence. This is how this will be handled. Making sure that whoever's going to be doing the work knows if there are any deadlines, what's critical, what isn't critical. That is all, it's planning ahead of time, because what Ralph doesn't want to do is come back from vacation with so much work to do because there was nobody to do any of it. And once again, odds are Ralph isn't going to be able to get people to take over everything that Ralph does. So Ralph has to do, figure out what is mission critical, what can't wait, what can he not get done ahead of time that's going to have to be done while he's gone, that is going to require someone at least paying attention to it. That's how Ralph is able to unplug and actually enjoy his vacation and move on, okay, without feeling like he's hurting his business if he takes that vacation, which, we all need. So visuals are also really, really important. And I just, created this slide with an example of what a week's calendar can look like. Different functions are in different colors. and most of them are very small. So, and then there's white space. And the great thing about white space is that if you have something scheduled on Monday and it's a half hour and something happens and you can't do it, it's easy to move because you've got white space on your calendar. Most people have at least a little white space. Part of that is also thinking about when is the best time to be doing this thing. Are you in the habit of doing a particular function randomly or every day when it's something that would be more efficient to be done once a week and maybe should be done before the business opens? And I'll give you an example. I had a client who wasn't really getting to paying their bills because they were so busy doing everything else during the day. And the way they ended up paying their bills was when the vendor would call and say, okay, we're cutting you off. You are now cash on delivery, until we get paid. And so we were looking at that, and what we figured out was most of their checks came in, throughout the week and over the weekend. So if they made sure all the checks were deposited by Monday, then on Tuesday morning, before the office opened, they could sit down, take a half an hour, and pay bills. They'd be done. They wouldn't be managing bill payment, accounts payable by whenever an angry vendor called. They wouldn't be paying extra fees. So they'd be saving money, and they would have a system and a process done. Now, they were still the person doing it initially, but they were doing it differently so that it wasn't taking as much time. So that is another part of this exercise, is to say, okay, when is the best time for me to be doing this thing? What am I doing? How am I spending my time? And is there another way that could be more efficient? So when it comes to overall figuring out what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, the plan starts with this: listing what you do and why you are the person doing it. Because the one answer that's going to keep you doing something is there is no one, how do I want to say this? That there is no one who can be responsible for that other than me. So revenue growth is an example. Okay. Or let's say you are a trainer. Okay. Well, you're the deliverable, right? You're the person who's doing the training. No one else can do that part, but they can do the other parts of the business, and they probably have better expertise than you do because your expertise is in training. So this is what I'm talking about. When you list the things that you're doing and why you, if the reason is because there's no one else to do it, or because I don't trust anyone else to do it, or I don't have time to turn it over to anyone else, those are red flags that those are the things that need to move. And then the next step is, okay, who is a better person to be doing this thing? And do I already have written procedures for it? So it doesn't mean that you're going to hand someone a procedure and say, okay, now this is yours. But it is important to know where you have written procedures and where you don't, because written procedures are a fail-safe. And if you look at it this way, if you don't have written procedures on anything and you're the only person doing everything, and God forbid you get hit by a bus and you're not dead, but you're in a coma for 30 days, how can anyone step in and get anything done in your business? Like, they can't pay bills, they can't access the computer programs, they can't get a hold of clients. You're toast. We don't want to be in that situation. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, but I certainly don't have time to be writing procedures. Okay, I get it. But here's what you can do. if there's a task I'm doing that I should not be doing that, Jack should be doing, but I don't have written procedures for it, I'm going to figure out a process for teaching it to Jack, and Jack's going to write the procedure. And this serves a couple of purposes. Number one, it gets the procedures written. Number two, I'm going to review those so I can be sure that Jack understands what it is Jack's supposed to be doing, because Jack took the notes and Jack wrote the procedure. So it helps me know that if I'm training accurately and appropriately, and if Jack is hearing what I'm saying and is picking up on those things and is learning them. Okay? So 2 birds, 1 stone. The other thing you can do is, if you want to be set before you're actually going to delegate, as you're doing that task, turn on the voice recorder on your phone and record the steps that you're going through and what you're doing, and then you can have it transcribed. So there are ways of getting around feeling like you don't have time to stop and do these things. And then the next step of the plan is, so we know what the task is, we know who should be doing it, we know whether we have written procedures, and then the timeline. How long is it really going to take to turn this over to this person? Because what we're doing is we're gathering all of this information so then we can set the strategy. And then we can pick which thing we're going to start with, and we can get with that person and we can say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to take. Let's create the process for doing it, including monitoring and follow up. Okay. Okay, I did see something here in the Q&A. Let's flip this around. I'm a consultant contractor at a really high level. How can I find people who or whose company would have much better time management if they used a contractor? Oh, wow, that's a whole sales question. And the answer is, you want to, how do I want to say this? You should have a target market of companies that have used you in the past that, so you have an idea of what they look like. And then if you do outreach to other companies in that same vertical, you just want to explore, you want to do discovery, you just want to ask them questions. How are they handling this? How are they handling that? What are they working on? What struggles are they experiencing, if any? That's a whole sales process sort of thing. You can follow them on social and see if they're commenting on certain things. You can search time management, overwhelm. There's certain keywords that you can search to see, like on LinkedIn, to see who's talking about what. But then how you handle that whole conversation gets into a whole sales conversation that is, for another time. Let's see, what else do we have? Who's going to do the transcribing of a voice recording? It's a great question. And there are online free programs that you can upload a file and it'll spit back out a text version. You will have to read through it and make sure that it caught everything. It has to get used to your voice. These days with AI and the sophistication of AI, you could stick it into Chat GPT and say, please transcribe that, the free version of it, and say, please transcribe this audio recording, and turn it into a handbook or turn it into a something. These days there are a lot of options. Okay. Okay, these are great questions. And I will say something about automation and AI. This can also be part of, if there's something that you're doing that can be automated, automate it. You got to verify, you got to make sure that it's good, and you have to ask yourself the question, is this something that's better done by me as a human, or is there a process that I can put something into so that it gets rid of the busy work part of it, And a lot of that AI and automation is at no cost. And you can start with something small and work your way up. So consider that as well. Other questions? These are good. I feel like most of the questions are in the Q&A. All right. Well, I am leaving open the question part. Whoops, shoot. Shouldn't have done that. There we go. Here we go. Remember to ask yourself, what can we do if we have several hundreds of to-dos written? Well, that is a very good question that you then want to put them in order of urgency. I do something that I call siloing, where I have buckets and I break up my to-dos based on the bucket that it's in. So for example, if I have content creation, I will have a silo, a bucket that says content creation, and I will just put in there all the to-dos. Usually, I said this before, that most initiatives are linear. So there's something you have to do first in order to be able to do the next step. So that's what I look at. I look at, okay, what is this thing I need to do? What is just the first thing, the first step? And I put the first step on my calendar. I don't put all the other steps. I just put the first one on my calendar. Okay. If you have hundreds of to-dos, you do need to think about, are these mission critical or do they need to go in the parking lot? Are these things I need to do right now? Or are these just things that pop into my head that I write down so I don't forget them, which is great. But then you need to look at that list and you need to say to yourself, okay, what is the most critical, urgent, time sensitive right now? What needs to get done right now? And then the others are going to have to wait. Get that stuff done now. And then the other thing you do with all those to-dos is you look at them and say, and am I the person who needs to be doing them? Can I automate them? Can I outsource them? Is there someone else who I could be paying to do them? We have to consistently be asking ourselves these questions because our business evolves over time, and that will change time and, with that time and with how our businesses. If you don't know how to group the hundreds of to-dos, ask yourself what they have in common. Because chances are good there's something about them that it, like, for example, if you've written down email George, email Jack, email, if you have a whole bunch on your to-do list of people you need to email and why, those get grouped together. You're going to sit down for 30 minutes and you're just going to send emails. Okay. I'll give you an example. I do a podcast and I get emails all the time from people pitching themselves or their client to be on my podcast. So I carve out time to just deal with those emails, nothing else, not any other email in there, just those pitches, because I'm doing the same activity over and over again. I'm either saying no, thank you, or I'm sending them the link. I'm doing one of three things: saying no, thank you, sending them the link to fill out the form, or sending them the link to schedule an episode. Okay. So I'm doing the same repetitive thing over and over again for different people. And I've created signatures in my email. So all I have to do is grab the signature. I don't have to rewrite the same thing over and over again. That's part of the automation that I'm talking about. For those of us who perform many hours of research to get the best solution outcomes and make the best decisions where we can't necessarily time box estimate that it would only take the 1 hour we put in our calendar, how do we manage these cases? You break that research down. So what is the first step of that research? What is the second step of that research? What is the first thing you need to do? And you break it down into smaller pieces and just do one piece at a time instead of telling yourself you have to devote hours or a whole day or whatever it is. You may say to yourself, I just want to knock this thing out, so I'm going to take a day. Okay, then you need to turn everything else off. You need to go to the library. You need to do something so that you are in a bubble and you can just focus on that one thing and knock it out and get it done. You can do that. I'm not saying you can't. I have found that people don't necessarily follow through with that because what they feel is, I don't have time to take all of that time away from my business. And my response is, then don't. Break it up into little pieces and just do one piece at a time. These are great questions. And believe me, listen, I will say this too. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying it gets easier once you start doing it and you go through the process of figuring it out and identifying those things that don't necessarily need to be on your shoulders, or maybe don't necessarily need to happen right now. As small business owners and entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to have all sorts of ideas and all sorts of things we want to do and implement in our business. And sometimes we have to say to ourselves, okay, that's great, but not now. Let me focus over here. And then later I'll have the time and opportunity to do that. Oh my gosh, I see we have bumped up against our time. Other questions, comments before I give you back to Sharon? I hope this was helpful. I will get the slides to SCORE and they can get them out to you guys.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Diane. This was so much appreciated, and you can see that from all the comments that we've had. So thank you. This has been terrific. Any other questions from anyone?
Oops.
Wonderful. Well, if not, we will go ahead and end the session, and you can look forward to receiving the information that Diane shared with you today in your mailbox. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.